Hi everyone, my name is Nina and I am the Events and Communications Officer here at the EAUC. Welcome to today's EAUC Living Labs webinar. It is the third in a series of 3 webinars which are part of a national project we have launched on Living Labs to explore how we can use this concept to improve sustainability on campuses and in communities. This webinar will last for approximately 90 minutes. Thank you all for joining us and thanks also to Hassan Waheed, researcher at EAUC, Katja Brundiers, who works on Community University Liaison at Arizona State University, and Fletcher Beaudoin, who is Assistant Director of the Institute for Sustainable Solutions at Portland State University, all of whom will be leading today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded, just so you all know, and will be uploaded to the EAUC website tomorrow. So just a little bit of housekeeping to go over now. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me well. As webinar attendees, myself and today's speakers cannot hear you speaking into your microphones. In light of this, if you have any technical issues at all throughout the webinar, please click on the chat button in the top left-hand corner of your screen. A pop-up box will then appear and you can send any questions you have by typing them into that box. There will be a number of opportunities to ask questions throughout this webinar. You can ask questions by clicking on the Q&A button in the top left-hand corner of your screen. You will then have the option to type your questions to our speakers publicly or privately. Alternatively, if you do wish to utilise your audio at any point to ask questions, please click the raise your hand button and I will be able to promote you to a panellist so that you can ask your question over the audio. So that's all from me for now, and I will just pass you over to Hassan to give you a bit of an introduction to our speakers today.
Thank you, Nina. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is one of the webinars focusing on a particular aspect of the Living Lab. We thought rather than describe the Living Lab as a whole, why not focus on one particular aspect regarding students, which many of our members are interested in, and looking at 2 world-leading Living Labs focusing on student work. So firstly, we have Katja from Arizona State University's School of Sustainability. Her work centers around developing and facilitating student-centered applied learning projects, and these are carried out in collaboration with community partners as well as on-campus colleagues, and they range from all the way from individual student projects to team projects, course-based projects, the variety that Katja will speak about, and they're designed and managed from a platform called Sustainability Connect. Katja also did her PhD at the School of Sustainability, and she has a master's from the University of Zurich, where she initially started working in Living Labs, where at the Swiss ETH Zurich, that's the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, she headed up a boundary organization called Seed Sustainability, which she'll also talk about today. It was initially started as a student-centered collaborative research project where students would work with businesses on real sustainability issues. Katja also has experience in the civil service. She worked for the Swiss Federal Office for Spatial Development, and she also has international development research experience with the government of Sri Lanka. So she has an all-round kind of practical and a research perspective, academic perspective, which makes her a very good candidate for that Living Lab coordinator position, a person who's able to understand both the research side and the academic side of the research side and the practical side of Living Lab projects. Then we also have Fletcher Beaudoin. He's Assistant Director of the Institute for Sustainability Solutions at Portland State University, and this institute's been quite famous in the Living Lab arena for doing great engagement works, specifically outside of the university and working with the local community. So Fletcher's work focuses on sustainability research, education, and community engagement. And he works to build partnerships between students and faculty, as well as staff at PSU and sustainability practitioners in the community. He directs programs focusing particularly on scaling and applied research, and also does curriculum work across the university. So the institute is really a platform for the institution as a whole. So that's where Fletcher comes in and supports long-term planning and strategy development, as well as the day-to-day management of the institution. Besides his work at the university, because I guess of his links he's developed a lot of links, in fact, in Oregon. So he's serving on the Oregon Environmental Council's Emerging Leaders Board, and he's also on the board for the Northwest Environmental Forum as well. So really has some strong links within the community and outside of the university, which allows him to build those links. So without any further delay, I'll pass on to Katja and Fletcher, and I hope you learn a lot from this webinar.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are really grateful that we have the opportunity to join you today. Because what was exciting for Fletcher and I to be part of this webinar series is that it allows us also to be part of a learning community and a community of practice. And this was really what got Fletcher and I together, that when we met in 2012, we started to learn from each other about how we go about developing our living labs, Fletcher at Portland State University, and I at Arizona State University, and previously at the Swiss Institute of Technology and University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And as we were learning together, we looked into a variety of case studies of other universities, and Fletcher also conducted interviews with the University of California State System. They have a very well-developed living lab with Lane Community College in Eugene, Oregon. We also looked at the East Coast, what New York City University does, and obviously the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And as we were learning about these case studies and trying to see what can we learn from them to help our own efforts, we realized that there are so many case studies out there, but few are connected with each other. And we thought, why not trying to do more cross-case comparison and really learn from what different living labs have done in their respective institutions, in their communities, and see whether we could come up with some kind of general and generic guide. And this work has been going on since about 2013, where we had our first workshop at EAUC, that is the Association for the Advancement of Higher Education, for Sustainability in Higher Education, in the US. And we have providing these workshops every year because there was just a demand from people working on creating their living labs in their respective institutions, and they wanted to come together, learn from each other, learn with each other, and exchange. And so as a result of this work, we created eventually a guide that captures what we have learned from everyone we were able to interact with and read their case studies. And it coincides with work that Hassan has been doing for the EAUC, where he, on the other side of the pond, developed a similar document that kind of compiles the information about living lab features and good practices, and provides a very flexible approach how you can go about it. So we will draw today on the content of our guide for applied sustainability learning projects, which in their totality or in their collective really try to not only advance students' learning, but also really advance real-world change on campus and in the communities. And so we hope that we can bring about two key points. One is, how can we create sustainability learning projects that equally balance two goals? One, to really provide students with transformative learning experiences. And with transformative learning experience, we mean experience that really gets students thinking and invite them to deeply reflect about what values they have, what values they encounter, how these values and perspectives define what we do, how we do it, and why we work in sustainability. And the second goal, aside from creating rich learning experience for our students, is can these projects actually be designed and done in a way that they, at the end, support real-world change in communities or on campus and in facilities. And so can we measure the contribution that our student-centered projects did? Oh, that was too fast. So against this background, we identified 3 major learning objectives. And we hope that the webinar will help us to recognize that there are different starting points for developing a living lab. We will talk about a couple of case studies from Portland State University, from Arizona State University, and Seed Sustainability in Switzerland to see that a living lab can start top-down, bottom-up, or come in from the sides as an external organization, as in Seed Sustainability. Second, we hope that the webinar will help us to really take a long-term and a visionary view when we think about living labs, whether we start developing a living laboratory or whether we are in the process of reinvigorating or fostering it. And we really found one particular theory for social change very informative for helping us to think about living labs as a 5 or 10-year endeavor. And that's really where Fletcher and I are at, because we met each other in 2012, and now it's 2015, and we are still trying to expand and foster and deepen our respective living labs. So the long-term perspective is really something that we felt is very important to keep in mind as we are planning our daily activities. And then the third idea is hopefully the webinar helps us to also distinguish the different avenues of change that can work together to build a living lab. And we will see that these different avenues of change are also reflecting the key partners involved in a living lab. And Hassan has this very nicely described in his guide. It's the students and the faculty advisors who work on sustainability projects. It's staff, academic staff, and staff working in grounds, estates, facilities, and operations, but also in the community who provide projects, who can be partners in implementing identified solutions. It's the administration, the leadership of the university. So these are the kind of key stakeholder groups, and everyone has a line of work, and we can tap into these lines of work. So this slide shouldn't overwhelm you. It was a mental model that Fletcher and I developed to help us think about what are actually the specific activities that we should do when we try to really think of a living lab in a programmatic way, where we don't have individual projects that we are developing, but we try to come from a vision of how in 5 or 10 years our living labs should look like, and how can we work towards this vision. And we were drawing on a social change theory, and that's called the transition management theory, and it was developed by Professor Dirk Loorbach at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. More importantly, Dirk Loorbach is also the director of the Dutch Research Institute on Transitions. This institute thinks very deeply about changing systems. How can we move from a fossil fuel-based energy system to renewable energy system? Or how can we move from individual car-based society into a way of sharing mobility that is more people-powered and powered through renewables? So they really think about systemic transformation, and we felt that's appropriate. It's an appropriate framework when we think about creating a living lab, because we have very transformative aspirations with it. And the key of this idea of transformation is that it occurs, that the social change process occurs over a series of phases, and we have it illustrated here. with the pre-development phase, takeoff phase, acceleration phase, and stabilization phase. And in every phase, there are different people doing specific things to really line up a change process. And just very briefly, the pre-development phase is where people come together intentionally and serendipitously because they share a commitment. In this case, they share the idea to provide very interesting sustainability projects for students that connect students with people on campus and in the community to create collaborative teams for change towards sustainability. And as they think about this vision and start getting into first actions, doing first projects, that's the takeoff phase. And they build momentum, they create more buy-in, ideas spread, the excitement, the positive energy that comes from initial successes of those projects spread around, and that's the acceleration phase where a living lab really becomes widely adopted. And then ideally, we hope that at one point, living labs can be a new normal, a new way of how we teach, learn, conduct research, and engage with each other on campus and in the community. So that's the kind of 4 phases that are very important for us to think about creating living labs. And then the colored boxes are the avenues of change. And I start from the bottom. A key avenue of change obviously is, let me start, with the sustainability pedagogy. Applied sustainability learning projects really should help students create and adopt capacities that allow them to become sustainability change agents. So how can students use projects alongside their career within the undergraduate or graduate program to really develop capacities for sustainability solutions and problem solving. And this line of work are the students and the faculty. Then a second one is the fair green, fostering connections. And what we have seen was there are a variety of projects at every campus that try to create their own little mini living lab, but often these projects are not connected across schools and departments to something more comprehensive. And that's why we thought, how can we create more synergies and more programmatic efforts by connecting projects to programs? And this line of work addresses mostly staff, academic staff, staff in grounds, estates, and also in the communities who bring projects to the university as well. And then the dark green is, we labeled it overcoming bureaucracies. We always know there are a variety of challenges to incorporate applied sustainability learning projects in courses, create maybe team-based master thesis, make it attractive and valuable for faculty to provide those kind of projects. And we need to change our curriculum, our promotion and tenure standards in order to build better incentives. And then the dark blue one is the line of work for people maybe like us here involved in this webinar who really come together to think about and create a living lab on a daily basis, and they try to bring these different people and their line of work, the students and faculty, staff and community partners, as well as the academic leadership of the university, try to bring those together into a coherent and integrated living lab program. So going forward, we will now switch to look at the case studies, and the way we thought how we present the case studies was that we wanted to pick, for each case study, we wanted to give you some background and then pick activities and tools from the 4 phases and from these 4 avenues of work to show you how the different living labs evolved, and that there's not one way to do it, but that there are a couple of tools and activities that when put together in a sequence, it really can help to create, how should I say? Well, the word doesn't come to me, but to create a programmatic and well-supported sustainability living lab. So Hassan asked me whether I could speak a little bit about seed sustainability at ETH Zurich, because it is a model that emerged as a student initiative. Today, seed sustainability's mission is to really encourage students. Let me just quickly find my notes. Today, seed sustainability is a service that is housed within the Swiss Institute of Technology, and it sees the whole northern region of Switzerland basically as a living lab. So projects are being recruited from businesses, from municipalities, from state governments, from NGOs, from this northern part of Switzerland. And the idea is really to allow students from across the university, from across ETH and universities in Zurich, to participate in those projects and to translate their learning into action on the ground. Today, ETA seed sustainability is integrated in sustainability at ETH, and that it was an important step because sustainability at ETH is the hub for any sustainability work in education, research, and outreach. And you see the research domains at the right, with illustrated with pictures, and we try also to create projects that we recruit from our community partners in those research domains to link students not only to sustainability initiatives on the ground, but also be able to tap into those ongoing bigger research streams that are the feature research lines at ETH. ETH sustainability is also, ETH sustainability at ETH, sits under the president's office and also reports directly to the president. And this obviously puts sustainability in a spotlight and gives it a prominent and powerful position. So how did seed sustainability emerge? It started out about at the same time as the field of sustainability science gained traction on a more global scale. And it was a couple of students who were enrolled in the Human Environment Interface program. And they really tried to think about how can we introduce what's happening about sustainability science as a normative field of research and a field that tries to translate knowledge into problem solving on the ground. How can we translate this into student curricula and make it available to students? And the easiest way seemed to be to offer students the opportunity to do their bachelor's and master thesis on a real world project. This team of students also thought very hard about what would be the best model to offer this kind of services. Should this be a student club that's operated out of the university, or should they start a startup? And they decided to set themselves up as a not-for-profit association that was independent of the universities. And a key line of income was that for their matchmaking services, when they recruited projects from businesses or municipalities and NGOs, and found students across the universities, found faculty supervisors who were willing to support the student in conducting a master thesis on an applied project in collaboration with students from other departments or even other universities. So for all these coordination services, Seed Sustainability asked for a service fee that the project partner provided. We didn't provide scholarships to students. And the different matchmakers and facilitators that supported these projects worked on a voluntary basis. In a second step, we were able to gain some finance from a foundation, and this then allowed us to build out our services and also create a database for tracking. And then even a couple of years later, we were invited to use office space to remain an independent non-profit organization, but to use office space provided by the university so that we can bring down our fixed costs, because the university saw the value of the services we offered. Nevertheless, at one point we decided it would maybe make most sense to become part of ETH sustainability. And so negotiations started that we could become a part of the sustainability hub, ETH sustainability. And we were lucky that we could start these conversations as the conversations around creating a sustainability hub emerged. And this allowed us to really offer our services for students ETH-wide, so that whatever program you're in, whether it's mechanical engineering, chemistry, or you are in the human environment interface program, you have the opportunity to work on a real-world sustainability project with partners in the region. So let me just make this a little bit more concrete. What are some key features of Sustainability Connect? Sorry, I tried to go back. So we, for example, we worked with the Swiss Federal Council's Sustainable Development Strategy, and they wanted to receive guidelines how they can better communicate about the diverse sustainability programs that our federal state is running and how they are being adopted by the different states. And so we recruited students from obviously the communication department from the University of Zurich, from the environmental studies program at ETH Sustainability, and two economists working at an economic university in the eastern part of Switzerland. And so these 4 students all had their questions picked out, and they worked independently on their master thesis, and Seed Sustainability helped to bring it together into a coherent project that provided one integrated guide to the Swiss Federal Councils of Sustainable Development to inform their communication strategy going forward. And so you can see that in order to break one big project into individual student theses and allow the students to work in their own institutions on their own timeline and still create a coherent whole, you need to have facilitation beyond the matchmaking. And that was really the key feature of Seed Sustainability, that we provided process support, and that was based in the idea of co-creating knowledge, that students really work with people from the Swiss Federal Councils of Sustainable Development and other stakeholders to identify what is the best way to communicate the sustainability strategy in order to create buy-in and political support. So what over the time, what specifically did we do? And I just pick here a few key activities. In the very early stages, we focused obviously on students' education. So the sustainability pedagogy was really important to us, and we thought about how can we offer very rich sustainability learning projects that also are able to contribute to change that's ongoing in our region. And so we developed good project guidelines, and our good project guidelines focused on 2 aspects. One was the process of collaboration, and I illustrated it here with this little image. What do we need to do from the beginning throughout the project and at the end of the project, so that each project creates a tangible outcome, and as it ends, it's also the opportunity for new students to continue with the project and take it to a next level. So what are good guidelines to support the collaboration between students, faculty, and community partners in a very dynamic setting? And then we also talked about how do we need to design projects on a content level so that we really think in transformative ways about a sustainability problem and move beyond just analyzing the problem and better understand it, and move towards conducting research on solutions. What solutions could there be? How would they look like? How could they be developed? And we wrote this work up in an article that you will see referenced in the reference pages if you're interested in the details. But the key I wanted to mention here, at the beginning, it was helpful for us to really identify what makes a good project in terms of the process and in terms of what the project should deal with and what competences it should build for students, and what should be the real-world outcomes, the tangible products for community partners. Then moving on to the takeoff phase, as the funding, as we were a little bit established and we started to reach out to funders and we were successful in receiving a substantive amount of money, we tried to work on linking the individual projects that we had better together into more programmatic efforts. And so to do this, we developed a website and a database that helped us track projects, archive them, and that reduced the redundancy or repetition of certain project ideas that students came to us about or that community partners brought. We could really connect it to what we had already done. We could also showcase and feature the work that was done, and make kind of a public library out of this project tracking database. Then in the next phase, we really had to think hard about how can we grow and how can we grow in a way that we are not accelerating ourselves too much. And so we were a student nonprofit initiative, but already from the beginning we had an advisory board, and we were very mindful in thinking about how should this advisory board look like if our key goal is to be a bridge between academia and practice. And so the advisory board also reflected this bridge. As we then tried to become part of ETH sustainability, we thought the advisory board, and we determined it's best to make sure that within the steering committee for ETH sustainability, there are a couple of steering committee members who considered their responsibility to really advise the development and growth of seed sustainability. And that was really important because it linked a bottom-up student initiative with the top-down level and created a strong connections that supported this bottom-up initiative financially and institutionally. And then now seed sustainability is really well anchored in ETH in Zurich. It's well known in the northern part of Switzerland. And I think it had to do that seed sustainability always talked about what is the organizational model so that people outside of the university can actually find us and find a way to get their projects to students and faculty. And that also within the university, people know what the right and left hand is doing. And so the idea of the organizational model is really making it clear and visible to outside partners how to approach the university, whom to approach and with whom to work with if you want to create student-based projects that serve your sustainability initiatives. And at the same time, also make sure that within the institutions, people know about seed sustainability and know how and who to access it. And obviously the organization model evolved as we moved from a non-profit organization outside of the university into an entity of ETH sustainability. And that was kind of a co-evolutionary process, but it was always something we paid attention to. So these are just 4 examples of the kind of tools and activities that we used in order to help sustainability grow from an initial idea and strong vision that was driven by students into a service that is now a couple of years old and really well anchored and well used by students, the community partners, and the leadership of ETH sustainability. So that was the case study of describing seed sustainability. We have now some time for discussion. If any questions came up or things you would like to clarify.
Okay, so if anyone's got any questions, if you'd like to use, there's a Q&A button in the top left-hand corner of your screen. So feel free to type them in there, or alternatively, if you'd like to speak to Katja, if you can just raise your hand and then I can get your audio active for you. I'll give you a couple of seconds for those questions to start to come in.
While we wait for participants' questions, I have one. I was wondering if you could talk about how you got the initial funding for the startup. I mean, yes, you had some students, but surely you had to have some funding to start your living lab and make the case that allowed for further funding to pour in.
Yes. So at the very beginning, there was really no funding involved. It was volunteer-based. But then the first projects that we created generated small funds that allowed us to pay a part-time position of the person who ran our office. The key funding that came in was when we looked a little bit around and tried to identify who are the foundations and the institutions that would provide funds to a service as we were trying to develop. And there is, the Mercator Foundation, and there was at the time another organization whose name I'm blanking on right now. But we applied to their stream of supporting sustainability education and research, and they clearly saw the value in the work that we have been doing, although we had only few projects at the time to present, but we could make a very strong case why this kind of service was really important. And so alongside with this funding came also the institutional support and the personal leadership from the director of this foundation, who started to speak very positively about seed sustainability and the efforts that we are trying to develop. And so we used that money to develop our website, and I showed you the image so that people could easily find ourselves, and that we had a database where everyone could also go and see what projects have we done, download the reports, really read up on research findings and have a benefit from this. But the key also is, as I tried to allude to, different streams of fundings can work, and we worked with volunteers. We had our service fee for the facilitation that we provided. Then we got money for the specific project to develop the project tracking database. Then we got in-kind services by using rooms without paying for rent and utilities. That was an in-kind service provided through the university. So we really tried to diversify the ways of how we generated revenue and financial support.
Okay, thanks, Katja. We've had a question come in from Liz Cooper, which is, can you give some examples of some of the most successful projects you've run in terms of outcomes?
Yeah, so I have to say, maybe for this question, it's best to look at the website, because I left Seed Sustainability in 2006, and I was just talking about it because Hassan felt it was important to bring it up, as it was a student initiative in its early phases that became then a university-wide service. So I apologize if I'm not up to date with current projects. But clearly, the project I explained with the Swiss Federal Council on Sustainable Development, the project outcomes there was that the 4 students created one policy brief informing how communication should happen based on their field work that they did with the different agencies in charge of implementing sustainability programming. So how should the federal government communicate about sustainability initiatives, what topics to stress, what kind of institutional support would be needed to facilitate the work of the state and agencies. So this was a policy brief that has been considered and adopted and informed the strategic work on the communication strategy. We have also worked with a startup in the nanotechnology field, and they wanted to make sure that their development of packaging material that uses nanotechnology to prevent microbes from developing, that this research was done in responsible ways. So what are actually the environmental implications of these nanotechnological applications in packaging? How does it impact water streams, for example? what is the societal perception on the risk? So that was a risk analysis. And what is the emerging regulatory environment that came up? And so these students did their respective research on impacts on waters, waterways, on risk perception in different societal groups and their regulatory environment, and also brought together into a document that advised the startup company what to do and how to communicate about it to create transparency and accountability for the innovations that they were trying to scale.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katja. I know we're quite tight on time today, so if we move on, but there'll be another couple of opportunities for questions later. So yeah, please feel free to think of questions as we're going along.
Okay, so then I pass on now to Fletcher, and he will share his work on living labs at Portland State University.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. And then just so everyone knows, Katja will be advancing the slides for me. So I'll have to end my each slide with something like, please advance. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone, or evening. My name is Fletcher Beaudoin. I'm here at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. Biggest city in Oregon. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our programs called the Sustainable Neighborhoods Initiative, which has really been a keynote living lab program that we've been advancing here, really focused on our engagement in the community. But before I do that, I kind of wanted to provide some framing for who we are, both PSU and also the Institute for Sustainable Solutions. So Portland State is a fairly young university, I think founded in the 1940s. And if I could show you a picture of our campus, we're very embedded within the city. So we pretty much have a direct overlap with our downtown, the downtown of Portland. And that really defines how we like to work with the city with our research and educational experiences, where it's really meant to be enmeshed with the city's operations. The Institute for Sustainable, and two more things. We have about 28,000 students, and most of them are commuter students. So we have about 10% that live on campus. So the large majority are students that are coming from Portland proper and commuting in. And the Institute for Sustainable Solutions is a fairly unique cross-departmental unit within Portland State. We're not a college necessarily. We don't have students that are directly taking classes with us. We're really a broker and a facilitator. And our focus is really on urban sustainability and on bringing together interdisciplinary teams of faculty and students to engage productively with our staff and with our surrounding community on sustainability projects. We report directly to the president, which is something that has been something that we've worked on over the years to elevate this work and make sure that it's increasingly moving out of kind of the bowels of the university and into some of the higher realms. And I'll also mention, as important context, that we manage a $25 million gift that the university was able to successfully receive for using sustainability as a mechanism for transforming the university. And I'll speak a little bit more about that. We're in year 8 of that gift. It wasn't an endowment. It was a gift that was meant to be catalytic to build capacity and to help us essentially build our capacity to survive and thrive into the future using sustainability as a focus. You could advance it, Katja. More specifically, I wanted to talk about our Sustainable Neighborhoods Initiative, which is just one of our programs at ISS. So we're really structured with around a variety of different initiatives, which are kind of big buckets of activity. This one really connects to PSU's motto of "Let knowledge serve the city," as I mentioned before. And a long history of strong community engagement with the region. Kind of one of the challenges we were facing, though, as we were really interested in not just propagating more student experiences and more numbers of students and more student hours, we were really interested in that numbers of students and student hours and the impact that we're seeing in the community. Things like, kind of reduction in carbon emissions, or increased walkability of neighborhoods, like these big goals that our region is striving for, and in many cases doesn't have the capacity to move forward just by themselves. They're big, complex issues that require multiple actors to be pushing on. And we think there's a huge role for the university in being one of those people that's pushing and advocating and driving for some of those bigger changes. So with our Sustainable Neighborhoods Initiative, oh, not quite yet. We saw this opportunity. Specifically, there's a few neighborhoods in Portland that are organizing with major sustainability goals that are lining up with broader goals that the city has. But there's essentially pockets of very intense activity around sustainability, and we saw this great opportunity to connect with these community-based organizations and serve as kind of an accelerant for their efforts. So you can change now. So these are the neighborhoods in Portland. If any of you have been here, the three of them are on the east side of Portland. So Portland is broken into the east and west. If you can see, the river coming down the middle is the Willamette River. Starting at the top is Living Coley, which is a neighborhood that's rapidly gentrifying. It's facing some significant displacement problems, and they have their major goal is around how do we stabilize the population that we have here and ensure that they're benefiting from any sustainability improvements that we're able to achieve. The Lloyd Eco District is a business district focused on sustainability. Foster Green is a giant area, once again, facing development pressures, trying to make sure that those people that live there are benefiting from sustainability investments, such as bike infrastructure or more green buildings. Then Soma is downtown. This is around the university. So the South of Market Eco District is really our campus is a living lab. So the way we've framed our campus as a living lab initiative, which I won't speak about today, is not just on our campus, but it's really our campus plus the surrounding neighborhood right around us. So we've really kind of folded those two in together. And what we've done essentially is in 2013, we went out to probably about 12 different neighborhoods, because this is just a subsection of, I would say, the neighborhoods that are organizing around sustainability. And we created essentially a request for proposals process where people applied to work with us strategically over 3 years to connect with a series of classes and research experiences, where ISS would serve as a broker for delivering up these experiences. If you go to the next slide, Katja. And we essentially chose, out of that whole process, we chose those 4 organizations. And this is a kind of a conceptual model for what we're trying to move away from is just projects scattered throughout the city. And because there are tons of community-based projects going on, and they will continue to go on. But our whole idea was, if we can concentrate our effort and our resources on a smaller subsection of the city, and specifically focus on some partners and some places where there's a lot of momentum and growing capacity to work with the university, and also to really work on major sustainability issues. We think that those things come together and actually allow us to tell that story of student engagement to impact. And we've been learning a lot about that over the last 3 years. So essentially, we're within Portland State, we find projects, these student projects, and then we go back out to the eco districts and we make that connection. And this is all facilitated through kind of a 3-year agreement with each partner that outlines specifically how many courses we plan to do together, how many resources on both sides are being put on the table, and if there's kind of any broader goals that we are trying to achieve. For example, with the Living Coley Eco District, it's very explicit that our focus is on the intersection between anti-displacement and sustainability investments. So that's our focus. We don't look for projects beyond that. If you go to the next one, Katja. So I wanted to just speak a little bit about some of the numbers we're working on. This is in the South of Market Eco District. Students right here are working on what's called a parklet, which is this idea where you're removing parking spaces and putting in sitting spaces. And to the left, there's a whole series of food carts. And kind of the challenge we were facing, one, is that our district has a lot of driving, and we're wanting to encourage more and more people to to bike and to take alternative forms of transportation to campus. And two, all those wonderful food carts, there's actually no place to sit and eat your food. It's a pretty basic thing. So what happens is people get their food and then they disperse, and there's actually no community gathering. And so we wanted to create a place for some community cohesion. So this is one project, and I'll kind of break this down very briefly for you. But before I do that, wanted to mention, so in 2014-15, which was the second year when we started the SNI, the Sustainable Neighborhoods Initiative, to give you a scope, we engaged about 44 classes across 18 departments and roughly 1,000 students in applied projects. And then the next year, the number dropped to about 600 students. And part of that is because during that second year, we really learned that taking on very big classes and trying to connect them with projects was a difficult strategy when you're actually going for not just the student numbers, but also impact. And so we reduced the numbers of courses, and we took on different courses that we thought would be better for actually being able to translate into impact. And we added in a component called, 800 students, sorry, in 2014-15. We added on a component that allowed us to have some continuity across courses, because one challenge we faced was that one course would end and it wouldn't necessarily realize the change we wanted to see. And so what we did is we created a process for hiring the most talented student from that one course and giving them an internship or teaching assistantships to work with the next course that was going to be working on the same challenge. So for example, with this project, the first course was a design course, and the students designed, what these parklets could look like. And then the next one, essentially the next period, we took one student and they did an internship where they applied to the city to create one of these parklets. And then we had another course where that same student worked with the course to do fundraising. We raised about $15,000 to build the parklet. And then we had another student work with us on the final course as a TA, where it was a design build class, and this is the students taking those designs and actually building the thing. So that's the kind of the trajectory we like to see. And one of the things that I'm kind of obsessed with, though, too, is how do we not just see these types of experiences happening every now and then, but how do we truly see them scale and have some more intentional pathways for students to access these high impact opportunities. Let's see the next one. So I wanted to just break down a few of the activities that we have here. Going back to the guide that Katja and I had worked on, because one of the things that would have been great for me as we'd started this process, if we had actually had some better resources to think very strategically about how you go about building a program like this. Because to be very honest, we've had to mess up a lot. And it's taken a lot of time for us to figure out what works and what doesn't. And what we've done in this guide, I believe, is we've created some shortcuts for people to quickly be able to prioritize and think about the high impact activities. So one of them is building a coalition. It sounds very, very simple, but with our Sustainable Neighborhoods Initiative, we found a few faculty that were already working in these neighborhoods, and we just started doing projects. And then we started meeting every couple weeks or every month and just sharing our experiences. It was very informal. It was just based off of where there was interest. It wasn't all the perfect people laid out. And we just began. And this was really important. Eventually, it led us to a grant proposal, which got us more resources to expand our faculty engagement. But just a small group of people that were committed to this and wanting to spend their time on it early on was very important. If you could advance, Katja. And as you see, it's in this pre-development stage that we're talking about, because this is the point in which you're building your value proposition for your effort, and you're testing things out. You're figuring out how you talk about this type of work. And it's just very important. So another one is talking about, you can go back. Talking about inventorying for applied learning projects, which is also fairly early on. And one thing that small coalition did is the individual faculty and people all knew about different neighborhood sustainability efforts that were going on. And we had a kind of a hunch that was a center of gravity that we wanted to focus on. And so we did this inventory where we looked at these different topic areas of people working on community-based learning across Portland. And sustainable neighborhoods popped up as something where there was a lot of energy, and where with a little bit of nudging, we could take existing efforts and we could connect them with our four focused partnerships. And so that was a really important step. And as you can see, it's kind of an inch beyond building a coalition in pre-development. And it allowed us to also have this early focus in our work where we said, okay, we know there's lots of demand in this content area of sustainable neighborhoods, and we know there's lots of supply with students and faculty interest. And so we think this can be a good focus for us in the long term. And one of the most important things that happened is it'll really allowed us to say no to certain initiatives early on. We knew that the type of things we wanted to work on, and we were able to say, we wanted to work on sustainable neighborhoods initiative, work within these 4 neighborhoods, and other work is great, but we're not going to spend our time and resources there. And it allowed us just to go a lot deeper and to get more resources. Next. So this is a more intermediate tool, which is developing faculty engagement workshops. And there's a variety of ways to go about this, but the major goal is to begin when your program's ready to kind of start engaging more faculty and bringing more people in. And by ready, I mean some of the things that we had on our plate is we really wanted to be able to have some initial examples that we could use to talk with faculty about. We didn't want to be kind of bringing a bunch of people in before we really knew what we were talking about. So we had some initial examples. We actually had some faculty who came, you can see in this picture, the gentleman on the left is Vivek Chandas, and he's talking about a participatory GIS class that he did on climate resilience in East Portland. And he gave very specific examples to his peers, which was a really great way of engaging people. And so what we did is we talked with our community partners, we brought in a whole bunch of really meaty projects, brought in a bunch of faculty, gave them a small incentive to participate, about $500 to participate for the entire day. And the whole goal was to learn about their work, to share these projects. And then as they left the meeting, there was a big board where we asked them if they were interested to write down their course and to the courses they were teaching and the projects they thought would be a good fit. And that was just a commitment for a follow-up conversation. And essentially that would allow us as facilitators to say, we have these 20 faculty that are interested in these topics. We'll have a follow-up conversation and work to matchmake between them and our partners. It was very effective, and usually we had about 80% of the people that would sign up to do something. Can you go to the next one, Katja? It is important, as I mentioned, that this you have some wind in your sails before you engage in this effort, and we took it on after our first year. So kind of we had 1 year of piloting, and then we did the next year we brought in more faculty. Next one. And then the last activity I'm going to talk about is an impact evaluation, and this is a more advanced tool that we're still grappling with. This right here is a graph of carbon emissions in the United States is the red line, and the blue line is Multnomah County, which is the county that Portland, Oregon sits in. And you can look at how we've been aggressively as a county and a city planning and taking actions on carbon emissions, and we've been able to dramatically reduce them. If you look at our per capita reductions, they're about 30% below 1990 levels. So I mention this because these are the types of kind of metrics that we're looking for in association with our projects. We're looking for, and we measure student experience. How did the student feel like it built their social capacity to have change in the world? How did it affect the student's retention rate or their desire to continue studies? We evaluate those at the end of each term, at the end of each class. And then on the other side, we talk with community partners and we say, what were the tangible things that resulted from the student engagement? And we really push at them hard to try and find decisions, investments, or policies that were influenced by the students. And sometimes that doesn't happen, but those are questions we're asking, and we're intentionally trying to design projects to have quantifiable metrics associated with them, outcomes. You can go to the next one. Gotcha, thanks. So yeah, as you can see, this is more of an acceleration to stabilization tool. And although we've been thinking about and testing this from early stages, but once you're able to really make this strong case with good metrics, it really accelerates your ability to get more funding and to make the case internally for doing this type of work. Next one. And then finally, some of the things we're working on moving forward is trying to build kind of affinity departments and course pathways. So we're within the university trying to tighten our scope of influence, just like we've kind of externally tightened our influence on a few neighborhoods in Portland. We're really trying to better understand the DNA of a high impact project, a project that can really have a positive impact in the community and have really tremendous student outcomes. We're trying to understand that and then design more of our projects to achieve that. And increasingly working to connect to major goals and plans that are going on in the region. This, for example, was a project we worked on. These individuals are deconstructing a house, and PSU was recently a part of a process that helped pass a countywide initiative that requires homes that were built before or 100 years ago or later to be deconstructed versus demolished, which has some significant economic and environmental benefits. So we're part of courses and researchers that helped influence that policy, and now we have more like I believe it's going to be around 200 to 250 homes a year that now are deconstructed versus demolished. And to kind of close it out, as we're this has been the trajectory with one of our programs, and we're increasingly looking at how we not only build out more of the pillars that we've mentioned in the guide, but how do we go back and revise them and adjust some of these pillars. So a very tangible example is that initial coalition that we built has completely changed and been warped. And so it's not, another way of saying it's not this linear process of you build one and then the next and the next. It's really this very cyclical thing where there's kind of a spiral that's moving forward and upwards. And so we're constantly pushing ourselves to go back and refine some of our approaches.
Thank you, Fletcher. So this would be another moment for questions and discussion.
Okay, so again, if you've got any questions, if you could use the Q&A box, and then we'll read those out for you, or raise your hands, and then we can connect your audio. Just give it a minute and see if anything comes in. Okay, there's nothing coming in at the moment. Katja, do you want to move on to the next section? And then I know there's a final opportunity for Q&A before we wrap up, isn't there? And then we can give everyone a final opportunity then.
That sounds good. So I talk a little bit about our work here at Arizona State University and at the School of Sustainability in particular. And the reason why we bring this late is why we bring this case study. I'm sorry, I want to go back, and why we bring this case study at the end is because often people kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, you at ASU, you really have a very beneficial context because there's so much enabling stuff going on that it isn't really hard to develop a living lab. And it was definitely a different experience at Seed Sustainability in Zurich. So yeah, we have a very enabling context, and I just wanted quickly to talk about this because we can really draw on it. On the one hand side, we have a president, Dr. Crow, who was trailblazing a pathway for sustainability practice and sustainability science when he redesigned Arizona State University. And he wrote his process up in a book, Designing the New American University, where he also details how he brought to life the design aspirations. And we can really draw on those design aspirations when we make the case for why we need to incorporate more real-world learning experiences for students, why we need to connect our classroom work and our research and education with what's going on in estate, grounds, operations, and in city planning departments. So what are those design aspirations? They include things like leverage our place, enable student success, transform society, fuse intellectual disciplines, work interdisciplinary, value entrepreneurship, support the development of startups and spin-offs, be socially embedded in the communities you serve, conduct youth-inspired research, be really responsive and provide value add with the type of research, whether it's student-driven research or faculty large research grants, that they should be youth-inspired and engage globally. So you see the ideas of leveraging our place, being socially embedded, conduct youth-inspired research. Those are clearly mandates that come from the idea of the New American University that a living lab can easily fulfill. But I think it also works bottom up, and it could be these design aspirations could provide good arguments for institutions that are just starting their living lab without having, like in our situation, a president who sets the stage. Then another important element obviously was that we have the Office of University Sustainability Practices, and they are in charge to implement the sustainability strategic plan of our university. And just on the Tempe campus, which is one of 4 campuses if we don't count the online campus, we have more than 65,000 students. So how can we create the goals are zero waste, carbon neutrality, principled practice in everything we do at the university, and community engagement. Then obviously another enabling factor was the big gift that we were given by Julian Wrigley, which enabled us to develop the Global Institute of Sustainability. And the Julian Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability is the hub for sustainability at ASU. The Institute is really in charge to facilitate sustainability research, education, and service across the whole campus and into the community. And the School of Sustainability is embedded within the Julian Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability. And that's also interesting that the school is embedded in an institute, whereas normally it's the other way around. At the school, we offer degrees ranging from undergraduate to master's and applied master, and then PhD, as well as executive education. And something that is at the core of all these different student programs is the idea of solutions-oriented learning. And we base solutions-oriented learning on the idea that our students should really develop competencies in sustainability so that they can make an argument about the qualities and competencies they bring to the world or to a job, as well as somebody could do in engineering or in communication or with a degree in medicine. And I won't go into the details of the sustainability competencies, but again, there's an article for you to read up on it. They include the systems thinking competence. They include the competence to think in structured and comprehensive ways about the future, including thinking about different ways of the future, from projections, scenarios, what if scenarios, best and worst case scenarios, and then more normative oriented visions. Then another competency is obviously values thinking. What are values, and what values are inherent in the projects that our students start to work on? What values are project partners bringing to the table, and do they overlap or not? And how can we have a conversation about the different values that people hold and bring them together in a project? And then the fourth one is strategic thinking. That really means how can we get things done? How do we design and implement policies? How do we design and implement new initiatives? And obviously, sustainability problem solving cannot be done by one person. So the interpersonal competence, the ability to work in multidisciplinary academic teams, but also to work with non-academic stakeholders, those are important aspects for our students to learn and to develop confidence in and tools. So in order to develop these sustainability competences, we adopt the problem project-based pedagogy across the curriculum, and we try really to build in real-world learning experiences. So from our curriculum side, there is actually pressure for us on the Living Lab side to generate projects that can feed into courses and students' applied thesis so that they can actually do the curriculum requirements that we have set out for. And you heard Fletcher speak a lot about his institute and the people working in his institute being a sustainability broker. And we also noticed at the very beginning that having a sustainability broker and having such a person with this job to really try to make connection, find people, bring community partners to faculty and students, and then support their collaboration after their matchmaking, that was a very important insight for us. And because of the need to create more projects for our students, we also had to hire now another full-time person who acts as a sustainability broker. And with this slide, I just wanted to illustrate work that we have done to really look into the literature and in a variety of documented projects to identify how do you support the idea of co-creation of knowledge, where you bring so different stakeholders together, such as students who need to have their degree, faculty who need to do teaching but are really interested in research, and community partners who want to be supportive of education, but they really need to have help with very concrete things that they want to do in order to improve their sustainability performance. So how can you facilitate a process over the phases from the beginning towards the end of the project, and again, the end being the beginning of a new project? And so we identified key activities and tools and methods that a sustainability broker can use to create projects where people work well with each other and they actually enjoy working with each other. Then another element was, and Fletcher also spoke to this, that we realized if we have to create so many projects to allow our students to have a real-world learning experience as part of their study requirements, we really cannot afford to develop one project after the other and invest so much time in developing relationships. And then it was a one-off partnership. And I put in a little red bomb, because I wanted to mark that this is something on our mind and we're working towards it, but it is challenging. Nevertheless, there are a couple of great efforts on the way. First, we just recently had a big breakthrough that our city, the city of Tempe, has hired its first sustainability officer, and thus put sustainability at the forefront of what it wants to do. And the Global Institute of Sustainability was majorly involved in creating this position, because we fund, sorry, the slides go wild without me. We fund for a limited period of time, we fund a part of this position, and the sustainability officer is in charge to link the sustainability programs of the city of Tempe to faculty at ASU, to the courses, and to really create lines of research and lines of student work where students and faculty can help further inform and implement the sustainability program of the city of Tempe. Then another area where we try to develop those multi-year partnership frameworks is through our Sustainable Cities Network. And we tried to replicate a similar program like Fletcher was talking about. It's called the Sustainable Cities Year program from the University of Oregon. And you basically send out a request for proposals to the cities in the valley, in the region, and they can respond with the proposal of projects that they would like to get done through student-centered work. And the university picks the city that has projects that currently fit best the learning opportunities at the university. And it includes the religious studies program, it includes communication, it includes engineering. Really every department should have an opportunity to contribute to the sustainability efforts of the city over the course of an academic year. So we try to implement this program also and have a partnership, work with one city over 1 year, and then continue with the city we have been working with through more individual student-centered projects. Then another program that we recently, that was developed at EAUC is the so-called PROMOTE, Project-Based and Modular Learning Program. That means the students enrolled in this program as their undergraduate degree take the courses from our undergraduate curriculum in support of a real-world project that they're working on. So currently, we have 2 cohorts. The first cohort works with a local school on developing a community garden in the school that produces food which will serve the cafeterias of all schools in the district. It's also used as an outdoor classroom, and it is a space for personal growth and lifelong learning. And so our undergraduate students pick from the existing courses and from within courses specific modules that help them to really work with the school on conceiving, designing, and implementing this school garden, including all the regulatory aspects that come with it. So this is another example where you see how it is really important for us to have a multi-year partnership framework with a partner, be it a local school, or we're also working with a major food bank as they are trying to improve their sustainability performance. And this helps us to feed projects into our coursework and for our students. However, the challenge is how can you allow students to pursue projects of their interest in the area they want to concentrate in, and at the same time you have project partners that you committed to work on their projects and find students who work on their projects, and these projects might not align with the interests of students. So that's a balancing act that we still try to resolve. Then the next one is implementing pilot projects that really illustrate what a living lab is and make it very tangible and clear for everyone involved. And as our school has been evolving since 2007, with changes in leadership, we added new programs, new students came on board, we grew our faculty body. We had to continuously think about which project could we do that really showcases the very idea of a living laboratory, so that people understand what it is that we are trying to do and can participate in it. And then the last one, moving on towards stabilization, is that we realized if we engage an ever-increasing number of students in collaborative projects where they work on projects for a client, and the client relies on students' outcomes for what they are needing to do, we really need to provide our students not only with academic training in systems thinking or research methods, we also really need to enable our students to learn professional skills such as communication, working effectively in teams, doing good project management, knowing how to learn in self-directed ways, etc. And so we have been offering a course in professional skills, which started out as a 1-credit course, and we now see it needs to be a 3-credit course to really enable students to participate in these very demanding projects with confidence and with some tools. So you see, at the School of Sustainability, we started out with creating the position of a sustainability broker so that we have somebody who can really help with the matchmaking and facilitation of the projects. And because of the demand, we had to hire another full-time sustainability broker. Second, we are working on trying to create partnerships with specific community partners where we can really work over 1 or 2 years so that we can reduce our upfront costs. And we also try to bring to the fore the cases, our project, so that people understand what we are doing. Yeah, I think for time reasons I leave it here. And
Okay.
again, it's coming as a surprise for you, but here would now be another moment for discussion.
Okay, we have had, if everyone wants to, again, to type their questions and we'll send them over. We have had a question through whilst you've been speaking, Katja, asking whether the slides and recording will be made available. Yes, it will be. It will be online tomorrow. We'll have the recording up, and then we'll also have the slides on there as a PDF. And I will send everybody who's attended a link so that you can all access the slides and the recording tomorrow.
Thanks both. I had a quick question. We recently had an event, as I mentioned, on living laboratories on the 31st of January, and some of the questions arose regarding naming your initiative a living laboratory. And of course, I don't see any reason that you have to name your living laboratory as such. You can name it anything. But the importance of the living lab and the model and the documents both of us have produced is the idea and the thinking behind it. So we see that you haven't labeled either of your initiatives as living labs, but they are living labs, and you haven't essentially used that to communicate, at least of the research I've done, communicate widely. So how do you see this dynamic at Portland State and Arizona State? That was there a reason for not choosing the word living laboratory, or did you prefer this other name for some other reason, or was there a backlash, or did people not like the idea, or was it not suitable for some kind of people? For example, our designers, as you highlighted in Portland State, maybe they didn't like the idea of a lab because they didn't identify themselves as scientists. So it would be good to get both of your perspectives on this.
So I can maybe start. Yes, we decided not to use, for Arizona State University, we decided not to use the living lab notion because we have good relationships with the cities in our valley, and they felt they didn't want to be a member of a lab. It sounded to them, like being a guinea pig in a lab that's controlled by others. And so it wasn't a name that they felt paid tribute to the idea of co-production and creating projects that are designed and organized by academic and non-academic partners in equal ways, and also create mutually beneficial outcomes. So that's why we chose the different words, like for the one program where cities will work with Arizona State University, that's called Project Cities, to really focus on the cities as a key partner and on the idea that students can participate in those projects. And I leave it to Fletcher to speak maybe why we chose for the guide the idea of applied sustainability learning projects as the starting point that then can scale up into something impactful and programmatic.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I'll speak to your point too, Katja, but in terms of living lab, I think we've definitely had some pushback from our communities, because a big thing we try and not do is have the perception of like going out and doing some tests and then coming back and never reporting back to those people. In many cases, this idea of like being tested is something that's very negatively, there's a negative connotation there. So that's why we didn't really use that framing, because we're trying to fundamentally break that dynamic that is existing. Like a lot of the existing paradigm is, oh, we'll go do our class and then maybe you can come get to this final presentation and then it's over. I mean, we're really trying to go do an engagement with someone and provide, ongoing and productive support to them, and that isn't the norm. And so that's one reason. The other is that I think the living lab concept, although it's like kind of intuitive to me, I don't think it's intuitive to others. And a big way to get people in the door is having something that like is a bit catchy. I think to kind of that they can almost like get a sense of what it might be fairly quickly. That's why we went for like the content area title of like, because the living lab in my mind is more process. It's about like how you kind of go about like doing these types of projects and like the ethic that sits behind them. But we went more for the content piece because that's like, we found it a bit more catchy. And then with the guide, I mean, I think we struggled a lot. I mean, of using applied learning, I think we landed on that because one of the big things we were trying to do with the guide is pull together a lot of these different pieces of jargon around like service learning, community-based learning, project-based learning, and have an umbrella that allowed them to kind of sit in one place and then connect that to this desire to have like strong outcomes from these types of learning endeavors. Because we just saw there's like all these different conversations about different ways to do applied learning, and we thought, you know, solidifying that in one term and then saying, okay, all these communities should come together and we should have this goal of really connecting this tremendous student energy that we're unleashing to real outcomes in the community.
So maybe if I could just wrap it up. I think we have a few seconds left, but I just wanted to bring home how the different case studies, you know, map onto our conceptual framework of conceiving of a living lab from its inception to a new normal. And you see here how over the different phases, the pre-development takeoff acceleration phase and the different avenues of change, starting from the bottom with creating an institutionally enabling environment, fostering connections among projects so that the sum is greater than the individual parts, and focusing on a pedagogy that is oriented towards solutions-oriented sustainability learning, and then creating some kind of structure that really brings together all the work around living labs or applied sustainability projects. And Fletcher coined here the term of the coalition. So that was our framework, and you see we mapped the activities that our case studies used out on that framework. So ETH, sustainability are the blue bubbles, and you see how it moved basically over time. Portland State Institute of Sustainable Solution used a slightly different approach, and then ASU, the School of Sustainability, had yet again another emphasis on what were the key tools that really helped us to make inroads in establishing our programs. And we can also share the guide with you when it becomes available. That is, I think, at the beginning of March, and EAUC will definitely receive the link, and we would be happy for you to have it too. And also, please be in touch with us if you have questions or comments, or if you feel something wasn't clear. We would be happy to, you know, provide clarification and stay in conversations with you and be part of your learning community as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's the end of today's webinar. Thank you to Hassan, Katja and Fletcher for sharing their insight and their questions and everything today. And thank you all for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar and slides will be available on the EAUC website tomorrow. So I'll send round a link, and please feel free to share these resources with colleagues. I'll also send out a short survey to gain your feedback on the webinar. I've just had a question come in, but it's just someone with just saying thank you for a very engaging and informative webinar from Paul. So yes, thank you everyone again. Thanks ever so much for joining us, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciated it. Bye.
Bye.